People are still coming in, but I will start my pregame conversation with everybody. Welcome to our second February alumni virtual gathering and the second one today. Glad to have you all on, and as people keep coming on, we'll continue to welcome them in. I'm Pat Wagner, Vice President for Institutional Advancement here at Southwestern. Today's presentation, Unmarked but Not Forgotten, Remembering Our First African-American Graduates, is provided by Dr. Dawn Pleas, who is the Vice President for Retention and Student Success. And Dr. Dawn is joined by one of our current students, Chloe Manley. But before I turn it over to those two ladies, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. First, if you have questions, please submit them to your toward the chat on the bottom to Crystal Wynn, and she will get those to the presenters. If for some reason we're not able to answer all the questions during the time we have, somebody from our office will reach out to you and answer your question. If for some reason we go longer than you can stay, we always post a recorded version of this later next week. So you can always check that out. And at the end of the session, Crystal will share some future dates for more virtual gatherings and any other information. But now I will turn it over to Dr. Dawn and Chloe.
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone? Nice to see you. Wish I could hear you, but that's okay. As he said, my name is Dawn Pleas, and I'm the Vice President of Retention and Student Success at Southwestern College. I am in my 27th year here at Southwestern. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised. Grew up on the south side of Chicago. And then when I was 8 years old, my father decided the family would take advantage of, the aftermath of Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, fair housing for Black families to move into predominantly white suburbs. And so we moved from an all Black neighborhood to move to an all white neighborhood. And so my first probably 8 years of life, I probably went to 5 schools, starting with preschool, as my parents tried to figure out what was the best plan for us in terms of schooling. And that has an impact on me because I've always been searching for my own community. I've always felt like an outsider, slightly as of a misfit. And I was always looking for a place where I could feel like I felt comfortable and I felt like it at home. And I know that in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they talk a lot about the levels that you get through, and you have to go through kind of like basic needs, then you go to safety needs. And then once you kind of feel settled at a place, once you feel like you've got a home and you feel comfortable, then you can reach up and you can have a sense of love and belonging. And I don't think I ever felt a sense of love or belonging until I got to Winfield, and I was 28 years old. And I've needed that time to just grow and be who I am. And so I like to think, like, if you look at me now, this is 55 years worth of stuff that I've been through to get to where I am. And I feel probably the best I felt in my life. And one of the things that I love to do, well, there's a couple things that I love to do. I love to spread hope. Hope is my word. Hope is what I feel like it's when you have to believe in something, even though you can't see it, feel it, taste it, you have a hope, you have a belief, you have a trust in something that you can't see. I love research. I got my doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania about 13 years ago now. And from that, I loved research, digging, researching, finding new things. And so that's 2. And then the last thing is I love to engage people with stories. I have probably a story for everything. And I think I get that from my mom. And so I like to weave those things all together. And so when I was in school, getting my doctorate, one of the courses we took was a course on history and mission. My doctorate is in higher education. And so we were studying the history and missions of colleges, and you had to study the history and mission of the institution where you worked. And so I was studying back then, and then the president at the time, Dick Merriman, challenged me because I wanted to know when the first Black person came to Southwestern College. And I thought I knew. I thought I had met a gentleman. I'd seen him in a picture on campus, and it was from the class of 1921. And his name was Walter Blanks. And I saw him in the corner of this picture. It was a freshman class. It was all white people. And then in the corner, there was the little Black brother. And he was in a chair, looking smooth. And I used to talk to him and go, brother, what was you doing back here in 1921? What was going on? And I would talk to him. And so I thought, well, this has got to be the first Black person at Southwestern College, because how can people come here earlier than 1921? And so I asked him, and he said, no, it's not. And he said, you need to dig harder. And so that started my process in digging. And I ultimately found the first graduate at the college came in 1892, which is phenomenal. He was born an infant slave in Geiger, Alabama, and he graduated from here in 1899. People ask, so how did he get here? What was the situation? How did he come here? And for me, it's a powerful story, not just about Black history. It's the story of a good college in an amazing town that welcomed a man that was different than them. And to me, it just started this whole search for hope and truth and being able to share the story of a college that I have grown to love. I've had the opportunity in the last couple of years to retire after my dad passed away. I thought about retiring, moving back to Chicago. I was going to get a condo on the lakefront. I was going to date several different men on different coasts and take trips to Hawaii and just chill. Nobody's laughing at me. Anyway, but I decided every time I would try to like go home to Chicago and feel this sense of something, it just was a big old city and I didn't feel a part of anything. And it just was isolated people. And that was before COVID and weather storms. And every time I would always be happy to come back to Winfield. And this has just always been where I've meant to be. And so this started my journey in this research. Along the way, I have researched other different people along the way. And I got to know this young lady who was working in my office. Her name is Chloe Manley. And Chloe is a junior. She'll introduce herself in a minute. And Chloe she's a very persistent person. And she's very persistent with me and kept asking me questions about stuff and wanting to know things. And it just helped what was kind of my little private little research world and my storytelling ability when I would go meet people turned into a partnership between she and I. And so I asked her to be on this Zoom call with me to kind of participate in the process and explain what intrigues her about this research. And then we're going to do kind of a little question and answer where she is going to ask me some things and I'm going to elaborate. Then if there are questions throughout the time, you can type them in your chat and we'll have time at the end to answer those questions. So I'll hand it over to Chloe.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Chloe Manley. I'm a junior biochemistry major from White Settlement, Texas, or Fort Worth, however you like to see it. I like to persist or go towards the field of water chemistry and environmental chemistry. I believe everybody should have clean water, especially down there in Texas right now. They're struggling. I spend a lot of my days here doing homework because my major is so challenging, but I have time to go to work in the Student Success Center, and that's where I happen to meet Dawn. I am also a student ambassador for this school, so I guide students, prospects for this campus. I love showing the college. I love this town. I never thought I loved a little rural town in Kansas. And that's where I kind of get to my point that I helped Dr. Dawn, excuse me. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's why I got involved in helping her with Helen. I was just a mean little nasty little freshman coming in, and I had the worst attitude possible, but somehow I snuck my way into her heart, and I kind of led me to get to know her some more, and we got to work on this project, and it really just kind of helped me realize why I get up every day and why I go to class and why I stay here in good little old Kansas. And so coming from my background, it's, white settlement. So I am I wouldn't say only Black person there, but the majority, of course, was white. And so I did have to defend myself a lot. I grew a lot of tough skin, but coming here and working with Dawn has definitely made me a lot more vulnerable and a little smoother around the edges. And especially working with Helen and Elijah Pilgrim, it has been an awesome experience. It really helps me see my why. And that definitely leads me to my first question for Dr. Dawn, which is when and why did you begin researching first at Southwestern College?
Well, I think it started because of my love for research and this paper that I had for class. And then along the way, I would find out different things and I would engage people, which would start different conversations. And then I would just dig some more. And so for both of them, I have done extensive research, starting with Elijah Pilgrim Geiger. I know everything about his life, including when he was born on a plantation in Alabama, through his journey through Missouri, through his route to come to Southwestern. He went to Baker University for a semester before he came to Southwestern. He came to Southwestern, so I know all about that experience. And then I know all about his experience after he graduated from here. While he was here, he was in the newspaper, it was quoted as being one of the greatest graduates they'd ever had. And he was elected back then, back in 1899, he was elected to the Athenian Society, which is the society of orators and preachers and lawyers and teachers. And it's like the highest group. And he was elected president of that group and was able to do the Gettysburg Address to this group back in 1899. And you have to think about the context of what was going on all around him at that time in terms of the immense difference it was. How do you elect a Black man when they were even questioning, do you educate the Negro? And so it's just phenomenal to think of his life. So I've researched all of that. Then I got caught up in his slave owner. And I've researched the slave owner all the way back to 1773 in Switzerland, followed them to South Carolina, found out what that whole family, how they lived, how they died, how many slaves they owned, all of that. Then one of the sons moves to Geiger, Alabama. It was founded by Alexander Geiger, who then turned the town into Geiger, Alabama. I know everything that happened on that land from the time they built the plantation up until now. And it was very fertile soil, so it was very good for agriculture. And so it was very prosperous, but disasters would always come. And it had such great promise, but everything that was built on that land ultimately failed. And so it was either boll weevil, it was a drought, it was tornadoes, poverty, all kinds of things took advantage of that property. And so now Geiger, Alabama is just a small little town, and it's predominantly Black. It's very, very poor, and it's dying, and they have very little there left. So then, so I followed that whole lineage, and then I've just followed Geiger's life. I researched his wives. He married twice, buried both wives. And I've just he's like a great grandfather to me. And it's sometimes so close to me that I don't even realize the breadth and depth of what I've done. And over the last 14 years, I've just kept digging and digging and digging and digging and digging, just because I'm just fascinated about who this man was. One of the things I don't know is who helped him get here? What white person was strong enough to help him get here? And one of the questions people always say is, it's going to be harder to find that because that's not something that you do. And if you do it quietly. And so if you're a white person and you're doing that work and you want to help somebody, you do it quietly. This is not putting it on social media and saying, I'm helping people come to Kansas. You don't do that. And so it's harder to find who was the benefactor. Where did he live? What did he do? All those kinds of things I'm still curious about. And so that's Elijah Pilgrim Geiger.
Sounded like me. Calling a Antoine earlier. So how does Elijah relate to you personally?
Oh, so in my research, I always knew my grandmother was born in Sedalia, Missouri. And my mom always talks about our childhood, our legacy. And you know how when you're growing up, you never listen to your mother and you're like, okay, mom, that's the 16th time you told me this story. I don't really want to hear it anymore. So, but I know the facts very well. So my grandmother was born in Sedalia, Missouri around 1910. And her father was the Reverend James Mitchell Harris, and he was a pastor, a Methodist Episcopal pastor. And so that's the first connection. I am a generations old Methodist. I mean, my Methodism on my mom's side goes back several generations. So that's the first connection. My mother, current mother is Dr. Sylvia Pleas. My mother is a pastor, a Methodist retired pastor. And so connection number two is this relationship with faith, Methodism, Southwestern, that kind of thing. But the most extraordinary thing is Elijah Pilgrim Geiger, Reverend Elijah Pilgrim Geiger, was pastor of a church in Sedalia in 1911. And then came right after him, James Mitchell Harris, who was my great grandfather, was the pastor of the church at the next year. And so for me, I feel like I knew Elijah Pilgrim Geiger before I was born, that he knew my family, that he knew my grandmother, that he knew my great grandmother. And so it's kind of like my connection to Southwestern that I feel so strongly was predestined before I was born. And so just the ties with him are just strong.
And speaking of kind of a long time ago, 14 years
I know.
have passed since you have done Elijah
Yeah,
Pilgrim.
right.
And that brings us up to date with Helen. And so why did you wait 14 years to start the first African-American female to graduate from Southwestern?
So Crystal reminds me of how long I've been doing this research and how much time I've put into it. And you just get focused on different things. And over the period of time, like the first 5 African-American males to come through Southwestern were so incredible that when I started researching the female side, it just wasn't as impressive. And so as a Black woman, I was wanting Helen Muriel Johnson to be this incredible figure that, you know, cured leukemia and, like, I don't know, had 25 kids, that one of them went on to be the president of the United States. I was like looking for that level of this woman. I needed her to be amazing. And she was just, her story was short. It wasn't very fruit filled. She lived in basically Winfield almost her whole life. And it was just kind of boring. And I'm ashamed to say I wasn't impressed by her. And so I pushed it off several times. And I would bring it back and I would try to find some stuff on her. And I thought, this is just not up. It's just not up to the standard of Elijah Pilgrim Geiger and all these other men that went on to be doctors and all that. And so I would push it off. And then the COVID hit. And I think I got a little humble and I was bored. And so I just started to research her a little bit differently. And I realized my shame was, how would I feel if somebody looked back on my life and said, well, that's kind of boring. She didn't do very much. She just lived in Winfield for 55 years and she didn't go nowhere. She didn't cure cancer. You know, her life is a waste. And so how would I feel if somebody judged me on what they read in a file or what they could dig through? And so I did it differently. I put her on a timeline in the time that she was at Southwestern. And it was amazing when you put a person's on a timeline, how different they look. She was in Winfield, going to school, elementary schools, post-secondary, all the way through, in a time of lynchings, the Spanish pandemic, Tulsa riots were 2 hours away. People did not like Black people. You know, it was just rampant. And for her to be able to not only be educated and go to college, but be so well documented, I just took that for granted. Like, she is in I find her in the phone directory, I find her in the yearbook, I find her everywhere. Her footprint in Winfield is just strong. And back then, people didn't even wonder if we were people, let alone put us in a phone directory, let alone have and list what your job was. And then for her to go to college during the Great Depression, where no one had any money, and this woman made it all the way through. How dare I say she wasn't a phenomenal woman? I mean, just her graduating from here is extraordinary. in that time. And in terms of, if you think about when most schools allowed Black people to come into their communities. And so a lot of times people will say when somebody enrolled, and I don't count that. I don't want it to be who enrolled. I want to know who persisted to graduation. Even today, everybody goes off to college, but who actually finishes? That's the most important thing. And so like on the East Coast, a lot of schools, there's a lot of northeast schools where they have admitted Black people earlier. But when you get kind of to the Midwest and then you go on down into the South, it's horrific how slow they were in integrating. So the fact that these people were so successful here speaks a lot.
And I don't know if you had mentioned this, but she only lived to 30 years old.
Yes, you are correct. She only lived 30 years. So she graduated from Southwestern in 1934. And by 1941, she was dead. She had two jobs. Her first job was, it took for a while for her to find a teaching job. When she did finally find a teaching job, she was a teacher at the Kansas Vocational School. And this was a school for special populations. And those special populations were the blind, the deaf, the criminally insane, criminals, and Black people. So this vocational school took care of those 5 special populations of people that you had to like segregate. And this was in Kansas. And so there was special schools for people. And basically at those schools, for the Black people, you were learning how to do basic, like how to be a maid, how to wash somebody's clothes, how to iron, how to, I don't know, whatever kind of vocational things that you could do as a maid, a laundress, anything that you could make money on, that's what they trained you on. And they were at school along with, like I said, the blind, the deaf, the criminally insane, and the people that had murdered people. And so that's where she worked for a year. And then she worked at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, which has a special meaning to my heart because that's where my dad went to college and where he graduated from. And so her connection with that school and relates to my father. And so that has meaning to me. Anyway, after she left there, she got sick and had to return back to Winfield and was in William Newton Hospital, where she remained for several years and died of leukemia. And the reason we know that is because we've gotten to know her nephew. She's got one nephew left who's 85 years old, and he lives in North Carolina. And so we've had several conversations with him, just delightful conversations about his life in Winfield, being raised here, and just his journey and his love for his aunt that he calls Muriel.
Yeah, that put in some perspective. I am 20. 10 years from now, I'm 30. You know, I would like to make an impact here at Southwestern.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe I might share a little vulnerability. My mom didn't even make it past 30. And so I definitely want to make an impact, just like how Helen did while being here.
That's
right. Like, brings me on to my next one is like, why study in past alums and, you know, people who have made their mark here at Southwestern?
Well, yeah, it's crazy to think that I love dead people. Like, I love dead alums. Like, I troll them. I look for them. I've gone through every yearbook. I go to cemeteries all the time. I look for their graves. And if it's unmarked, it just bothers me. I have Builder Pride signs in my trunk, and I will go to different places. And even though I know that they're going to pull them up and throw them away, I will put the Builder Pride sign on an unmarked grave just to show that this was a builder, because that's important to me. I feel like if these people honored us, she was the person. If not for her, I would not be working at Southwestern. If not for her, Crystal would not be here. If not for her, you wouldn't be here. And so that's a sense of pride. And so she laid the first, as we say here at Southwestern, the first stone, the first rock to make it so that we could do this. So anyway, one of my favorite stories is, so I've researched all the other non-white male alums, the firsts of all those. So I know Hispanic, Asian, international, I've done all that. And so I've researched. And so I found Rebecca Ortiz, and she was the first Hispanic female. And I've researched her life. I've talked to her son several times on the phone, just have had delightful conversations. And so I found where her grave was. And I was so excited to find her grave, and I was so excited. So I've been over there several times, and I took my best friend, Lonnie Boyd, up there to see the grave. I mean, it's just piece of grass, but I wanted to show her where Rebecca was, like we're going visiting, like in a town or something. And so we go over there, and it's right across from WSU. And it's just perfect to me because, along a lot of other things, I hate every other college or university in the state of Kansas. And so I like to floss and show that we're the best school in the country. And so anyway, so it was just perfect that her cemetery was right across from WSU, right across from the big Coke Arena. There's this cemetery. And so there she was. And so I was so excited to get out the car and show Lonnie where her grave was that I drove over somebody else's grave and moved it. And so then I had to sit there, get out the car and move this person's grave back. But then I felt bad, like I had shook their soul or something. So I took a picture of it. And then there's a there's a place online, it's called findagrave.com, where you can post the pictures of anyone's grave, and then it helps other researchers find it. Well, this person's grave was not on there. So I put it up there, and then I put a little note just to re-soothe whoever this person was in their family. Anyway, but I just love it. And then I go to the grave and I put a Build a Pride sign down on the cemetery. And my hope is one day that just as we did Elijah Pilgrim Geiger, we honored him 10 years ago, fundraised and raised money for his grave. I would like to do the same for Helen, and I would like to do the same for Rebecca Ortiz, and do the same. But it's just important to me. But I love old dead buildings. I don't know why.
Oh, goodness. Helen is definitely a special one.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Mm-hmm. Even though, like I said, she didn't have children, never married. I kept thinking about that. I don't fault men. The men I found, if they didn't have children, but for some reason, she not being married just hurt me. And then I was, like I said, I was ashamed of myself. And from that timeline, I don't know if you've ever put your life on a timeline, but it's a fascinating thing when you put your life on a timeline from the minute you were born to now, and all the markers that are on your way, all the stuff you forgot, all those oops moments you wouldn't want anybody to know, how quickly things happen. And you put it up against just the fact that you were able to survive. And I don't know back then how she was able to do that. One other thing I found out is one time we were going to go visit her grave. So sometimes we would go out there. We've taken people out there. Chloe and I would drive out there and just go visit Helen and her little grave site. And we would take the Builder Pride sign and we put it out there. And so one time we were driving out there, and Roger Moon, most of you probably know, former Professor Roger Moon, he was doing one of his walking, I don't know where he was walking, but he's walking. And so I saw him, and so stopped to just, chatting with Roger or whatever. He's like, so where are you guys going? And so we said we were going to this grave site. And so we drove over there, and maybe 5 minutes later, here comes Roger. He's just walking. And so he walked over to the grave. And so then he described to us stuff about the grave and the cemetery that we didn't know. He talked about all the other great builders that were buried there. And then he started talking about this 1918 Spanish pandemic that I had never at that point heard of. And just how many people died from that, and how the sicknesses. And this is the fact that at this time that we were discovering her, it was about to be COVID. Is just extraordinary to me, and how it's changed our lives here. I can't imagine. She lost a brother during that time. One of her brothers died of the flu. And Roger was saying that his mother was at Southwestern at the same time that Helen was here, and that his mother had to stop and couldn't continue, and had to then come back because she didn't have the money to afford Southwestern back then, because it was Depression. So I'm just wondering, how did Helen afford to come here? Because her mom was a laundress. She took in laundry. And her father had passed away. And so I don't know how she did it. And I don't know who helped her, or all those things. But it's just, she's a builder, and she's here.
Yeah, Helen definitely helps me put into perspective a lot of things. She can make it through. I can definitely make it through.
That's
and
right.
She's buried around the rest of her family as well. All her family over there.
Yes. Her family is buried there. There's several other. There's maybe 8 plots there, and 6 of them are filled. Not all of them have grave markers, including her. It seems to, in my studying of cemeteries and graves, that the people after you appreciate you, and if you don't have anybody after you, or people move away, or people don't have money, then nobody honors you. And so she didn't have children. She didn't have a husband. Her family didn't have a lot of money. And so there's no marker for her, just as there wasn't for Elijah Pilgrim Geiger. And also Rebecca Ortiz, like she buried her husband 10 years before. And so her son, his faith belief, he doesn't believe in like cemeteries and markers. And so he wasn't interested in putting a marker. And so hers just remains, even though she put one on her husband's grave, no one put one on hers.
Yeah, we actually talked to her nephew.
Yes, yes, yes. His name was Bruce Palmer. He was from here in Winfield. He was a great athlete and went to play at Pitt State University. He had said he had spent enough time in Winfield, he was ready to go. He was not interested in going to Southwestern College. He wanted out. And so he went to Pitt State and then had an incredible career. And is retired 85 and in North Carolina. So we just made really amazing connections, throughout that time. So are there things that we have left out, Crystal? Are there things that we needed to add?
Well, I guess honor time, we can close prior to my concluding remarks with a question. You know, we've come so far, but of course we still have a long way to go. So what is our responsibility as a builder community to inspire hope and continue the builder way?
I think builders are all about understanding difference and appreciating people that are different than us and being willing to like get over yourself and whatever your preconceived notions of people are and accept someone. And I think that's really important and why we've been so successful at Southwestern continually over the years, despite the different things that have been thrown at us, and why we've continued. The school, I just want to say real quickly, the demographics of the school currently. So if the main campus has a little under 700 students, maybe 31% of those students are white. Then maybe 32% of those students decline to state what they are. And there's no way to determine who that is. Some people feel that that is a biracial student that doesn't want to decide between differing parent demographics. Some people feel like it is students pushing back against government in their lives and are not wanting to say or to think it's really anybody's business. Some people think it is, I hang out with a group of people that may be different than me, and so I don't want to claim my whatever because I really feel like I'm more whatever. And so it's really difficult to say what it is. So it's about 31% white, 32% that don't declare, and then the rest I call just shades of brown. Hispanic, Black, biracial, Asian, Native American, international students. And so the college is just a little bit of everybody. And I tell people, if you don't like some group of people, don't come to school here. If you don't like white people, don't come to school here. If you don't like Black people, don't come to school here. If you don't like transgender, whatever, people with three shades of hair, don't come here. This is a place where you fit. And I can say that for myself, I fit here. And so if the world could reflect that, what a different place it would be. I just think it's going to require schools to be more like Southwestern. And I think that's why we have benefited and why we're being so successful currently is because parents are intentionally bringing their kids to a place like Southwestern because wherever they are from is so maybe racially hostile, or it's very isolated, or people are coming from screwed up families or communities. And so these kids are coming here and it's not easy, but this is the wave of what the country is going to be like. And so we happen to do it well, praise God, and we do it, and it's not something we were trying to do. It just kind of all happened. Like it's just slave came in 1899 and this Black woman came here, was here her whole life, but decided to go to school here and was educated by here. And so I think that is our responsibility, despite circumstances. And I guess that's why my word is hope, because the world is a hot mess and people need hope. And if you don't have hope, when you're hopeless, that's a bad place to be. And when you have hope, it just, And so it's just my word. And I think it's my responsibility. I've just been so blessed in life. It is crazy. And so I have no alternative but to give back. And I would hope other people would.
Thank you for that. Prior to even going into my concluding remarks, I would just like to say thank you so much for taking the time, to lead this session, as well as Chloe. You're an amazing student, and I cannot wait. I'm sure the others feel the same way, just to see what you go on to do post Southwestern. And thank you just so much for being the voice of students of color on campus. We're very proud of you. And I guess the last question for you is that you are the one who helped Dawn to uncover the beautiful story of Helen Johnson. And I know a lot of time and dedication goes into that, a lot of sacrifice. And so what does this mean for you, Chloe? And I'm putting you on the spot, but in dealing or responding to all of the racial injustices and the racial upheaval that the country has tried to patch up or recover from as a student of color on campus, what does this mean for you? And what should we know moving forward as far as what is our why? What is your why, and what should our why be as far as why these stories matter?
These stories definitely matter to not only people of color, but everybody. It really shows hope, it shows courage, and it really shows that if they can, then you can. Obviously, it's truly inspiring. If you just kind of sit down and listen and reflect on your own self while you listen to it, it really shows you that nothing in your way is stopping you. We have a very selfless staff here, and it definitely trickles down to students such as myself. And people like me will spread that selflessness and kindness all throughout campus and hope that everyone kind of gets on board. And it's truly just a beautiful thing to have something like this, especially as a person of color. I grew up in a town called White Settlement, so it says a lot. It makes me thankful that I chose a school like Southwestern, for sure.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you all for attending. It's been such a great honor to have you join us for the special presentation from Chloe and Dawn. I personally know, as mentioned, the time and work that Dawn alone has put into this research, starting from whenever I was a student at Southwestern, which is not that long ago. A little longer ago. But it's been just very fascinating to watch her on this journey of uncovering these two profound individuals. And I personally appreciate Dawn's sacrifice and dedication to inspire hope. And like I said, during racial upheavals and injustices, and just to continue to support the growing population of students on campus. I know that she was set to retire a little over a year ago, and she decided to go ahead and continue her good work at Southwestern after realizing that the need is still great. So thank you so much, Dawn. If anyone has additional questions, please feel free to submit them in the chat box to follow up, or we will follow up with you via email. And I personally can make sure that we get those questions answered. Dawn, thank you so much for presenting multiple times today. If you would like to review this recording, as well as if you by chance missed the two very awesome sessions that happened this past Tuesday on the Black student experience at Southwestern currently by Anja Clemens Williams and Elisa Shepard, those virtual meetups, both on Tuesday and many additional ones that have been held almost monthly at Southwestern through the alumni office, can be found by visiting sccans.edu/meetup. Again, that's sccans.edu/meetup. Just a reminder as well that this year looks a lot different for many of us, but especially the admissions office on campus. And so we are unable to go into college fairs and high schools as normal. So if you know of any future prospective builders, please send us their information and we will make sure to reach out to them. And then lastly, we are planning to continue these virtual gatherings this semester. So please continue to watch your email closely for future dates to hear more about SC updates from faculty, staff, and students. You guys have a wonderful evening. Stay safe and warm, and many prayers to you and your family.
Thank you all. Katie Riggs Johnson, that's my girl right there.